Hey guys, it's Hunter, welcome back to another video. So the Archon is one of those amp families that's definitely overlooked a lot in the high gain conversation, when maybe it shouldn't be. This is the 50 watt Mark II version in a series of amps that has a strong cult following, and as a fan of huge high gain American tones, I'd always wanted to try an Archon. The first iteration was really expensive though, and at the time when it was in production, I had the unfortunate problem of being quite broke. So when PRS announced the Mark II and that it would be more affordable, I was like, let's go. And then the tube shortage was like, all right, hold up a minute though. So I'd been patiently waiting and I managed to get one as soon as they were in stock. I've been playing around with it, using it for demos for the last couple of months, and I've got thoughts. Was it worth the wait? How does it compare to other high gain amplifiers? And how does it sound like in a mix? Smack a like on the video if you're going to enjoy it. That actually really helps out, and let's take a closer look. Alright, so what is the Archon about? Essentially, to my ears, it's kind of like a tweaked and modernized rectifier, kind of. It's definitely got a very unique take on that flavor of big, wide American high gain tone, but compared to my dual rectifier multi-watt, it feels like it's got a tighter response. The bottom end specifically isn't nearly as flubby, there are more pronounced mids, it's way easier to dial in, and it's got bright switches for each channel. That's the one paragraph review, which might be all you're looking for, and if so, it's been real. But if you're interested in the details, the nuances, and more tones, there are a few interesting points about this amp that I think are worth talking about. First and foremost, it was a controversial choice to reintroduce the series as affordable imports. After all, the original Archons were famously made in the USA at boutique price points, but I think it was a good call. But it seems that 290,580,000% of viewers have not made the good call of hitting subscribe. Here's your quick reminder to go ahead and hit that if you haven't already, so you don't miss any new guitar content. We're so close to hitting 200,000 subscribers, that's insane. Thank you so much to everyone that's already done that. Making the Archon family more accessible is never a bad thing by itself. The issue would be if they had compromised on quality as a result. But it does not feel like they have. It feels like a very solidly built unit, and I especially like the anodized metal stripe that proudly displays the larger of the two Paul Reed Smith logos, just in case you were confused as to what brand this amp is from. And when it comes to tone, it just sounds good, doesn't it? I said earlier it was kind of like a modernized rectifier, and I do stand by that, but only because it's the closest comparison I can describe over the internet and over YouTube compression, because it doesn't feel like a super modern amp. You've got this huge, thick, tight sound, but it retains this old school rawness. It's not ridiculously tight and gained out like a super modern amplifier would be. You can still clearly hear your guitar's character through this amp. That's the best way I can describe it. I've changed my mind, actually. It sounds like a warmer, wilder, less tamed MT-15. That's what it sounds like. They've even got very similar, super clean channels. But the main draw for my fellow Ooga Booga Chug enthusiasts, at least, is that unique, raw-flavored, crushing high-gain sound. Crushing just like the absolutely wonderful people over at Sweetwater are crushing it as my go-to place for all my gear needs. And they're also crushing it as the sponsor of today's video. Super smooth segue. I think I've been a Sweetwater customer for about 15 years now, so I'm super stoked to have them on as a channel partner and help bring you guys better guitar content. Anytime I need anything guitar-related, Sweetwater's my first stop. For buying guitars online, the guitar gallery is phenomenal. There's actual pictures of the guitar in stock, so you see the color, the figuring, the weight. You're not rolling the dice like you do with a lot of other online retailers. You're not leaving it up to chance. You're getting the exact guitar that you want. It's super awesome. They're redefining the online gear shopping experience. So all the gear you see in the video, obviously the PRS Archon, all the guitars, and also everything in the signal chain used to record the tones and make the content. There's Sweetwater links in the description for all the specs and details. Coincidentally, and this is crazy good timing because this is not planned at all, but for a limited period, if you pick up a PRS amp, you'll get a free PRS pedal as well. So you can get an Archon and a free Horsemeat overdrive, or a more classic Sonzera with a Mary Christ compressor, Hendrix-inspired HDRX, and the Wind Through the Trees flanger. You get the idea. You can also bookmark my general affiliate link down below for later, like when you're restocking strings or picks or whatever. It's a great way to support the channel. I get a little kickback to invest in the content, and it also lets Sweetwater know that I sent you so we can put together more fun videos for you guys. So yeah, Sweetwater, they're awesome. And with that, let's get back to the gain. Apparently, the original Archons had a couple of unique quirks, namely a very noisy effects loop and not a lot of range when it came to the gain on the lead channel. From what I understand, you basically got all of it up front, and that was it. With the Mark II, PRS has taken the opportunity to address those complaints because the effects loop sounds good and the amp is very usable across the gain spectrum. So my friend Colin, or CS Guitars as you might know him, has a long video on the topic where he explains the traditional standby switch doesn't really do much. Fender introduced it for servicing purposes, everyone copied them. Day to day, it's mainly a convenient way to mute your amp, but technically none of the tube amps that have them need them. On the Mark I, there was just one three-way switch to go from off to standby to on. But this time, PRS has just gone and gotten rid of standby. They're basically saying, if the amp is on, it's time to f***ing rock. Love it.
Where's my standby switch? Will my amp break?
And actually, the clean layout of the front control panel is one of my favorite things about the amp. Full separate EQ for each channel, as well as global presence and depth controls. It's all nicely spread out, it's not cramped at all. It is a little confusing that the volume of each channel isn't controlled by the volume knobs. That's the gain control. The volume is actually controlled by the master knobs. I'm sure there's some actually explanation as to why this is technically correct, but like, Why? It's a high gain amp and there's no knob labeled gain. That's just confusing and mean. The other thing I think is a bit bizarre is that even though there's quite a bit of available front panel real estate to either side of the control knobs, the bright switches and channel select are these tiny mini toggles. It's also a shame that only the channel is foot switchable, not the bright switches, but it is very nice that PRS includes a single button foot switch in the box. Okay, so Archon Mark II, final thoughts. Right now, this is probably one of the best values in high gain American tube tone. Feature-wise, it's pretty bare bones, but in terms of pure tone, in this current amp market, this is a very tough price to beat for a high headroom, fire-breathing all-tube head. If I were greedy, I wish it had a boost in the front to tighten up even further for modern metal, and reverb on the clean channel would have been sick because that sounds fantastic, but that might have taken it above $999, which again is initially one of the most compelling things about it. Tone is essentially the feature of this amp. And I'm not gonna lie, I was really curious about the Archon, but I was 100% ready to consider this a stopgap solution while I waited for the high gain PRS amp I was really hyped for, Mark Tremonti's MT100. He's one of my favorite guitar players ever. He'd been using it since Walk the Sky on all the Alter Bridge and Tremonti albums. Apparently it's even on some of the recent Seven Dust material too. Literally, I'd been hyped years on the MT100, so when the new Archon dropped, it was like, nice. A big PRS, high wattage, high gain tube amp, perfect. This'll do for now. I've since gotten an MT100 and it's sick, and I've also kept the Archon. Both have similar PRS high gain characteristics, that big, full American sound with a lot of that old school, raw, warm rock voicing, but they don't sound the same. Here, have a listen. So yeah, the response and feel is very similar, but they're not the same. It's cool, the Archon Mark II isn't just a cheap version of the MT100 or of anything else. It's very much its own thing that just so happens to not completely destroy the bank. But that's it for my thoughts on the Archon. Here's where I'll throw it to you. Have you tried an Archon, whether it was a Mark I or Mark II? What did you think? And how do you rate the Archon family's place in the world of high gain? Massive shout out to my amazing patrons who make each and every video possible. Their names are up on the screen right now. Consider joining them if you like what I do and want to support me directly. You can also join as a YouTube channel member or pick up some comfy merch. All of that goes directly back into making better guitar content. And of course, I just appreciate you guys watching. Social media, Discord, and the links to all the gear are in the description. As always, thank you so much for watching. You've been awesome, and I will see you for the next video.